Hi there, and welcome back to another One Take Two tutorial. This one is most definitely a break from the norm, if there is a norm, and I'm actually going to talk about a real-world gig I did about a year ago now. I've tried hard to get official permission to do this and be able to show far more details of what the actual show was, but I'm just going to have to talk about it generically, unfortunately. I may snip in a little photo that I've made sure that there's nothing showing of what that actually was or where it was and who it was for and so on. But yeah, if I could get a chance to use the actual footage of what was transmitted, it'd be far more useful for the explanation. But what I'm going to talk about was a show that last year I used. I was given 180 LED Kinetic balls to play with. And how I went about doing it, and entirely in Magic Q. I will admit I did have a hypnotizer on standby to pixel map if needed, but in the end I really didn't need it for a few reasons. One, Magic Q did everything I needed to, and two, just the design and style of this show. It's a black tie gala, so it's not too crazy rock and roll. There's not that much wild effects or anything that like that involved in it, and between really the FXs, I didn't really need to get even to the pixel mapper in this case. I was able to do everything that was needed to do, and everybody was really happy with the end result. So yeah, like I say, my brief was basically we found a supplier who's got LED Kinetic balls. We've got budget for 180. There'll be 8 trusses crossing across the stage. Do what you can and what you like. And I had 2 or 3 days to program on site. And then 1 day of final programming with the LD, and then the last day was the show. Broadcast live to the world, literally. It wasn't a national broadcast, it was an international broadcast. And so with that, for once, I had quite a bit of play. I knew 1 or 2 certain things. I'd already done the show as a lighting programmer, so I knew the show. I knew that there's 4 scenes, colour styles, which is gold, red, green and blue. And returning back to gold, so I knew that was one of my constraints. But other than that, it was a big case of nice and calm and show it off. Anyway, so how do you go about doing this with Magic Q? Well, first things first, the client wanted renders and wanted some previs to show off to the client, which I said, okay, you pay me for whatever software will render 3D kinetic balls, because the capture license I've got doesn't do it. Magic Viz, which is free, doesn't do it, and so on and so forth. And I said, well, there's one thing I can offer you, which is Magic Viz. So I'll go all the way back. These are not main brand Kinetic. They were Chinese motor winches and LED balls, and the supplier basically told me I had to use them in, I think it was a 5-channel mode. There is an 8-channel mode which has a DMX channel for maximum length and various other things. They gave me strange reasons as to why they've tested it and it shouldn't be done, blah blah blah, and use 5 channels, which was basically RGB length, winch length, and speed, and that is it. They gave me reasons which I've never proven to be right or wrong, and I just had to go with it rather than argue. So I had a few things to work out. So first of all, I created my own head file. What did I do? Well, I took a beam head. Let's take head number 1 and put it at full. In fact, I'll just locate it. So that is a beam spot you can see there. And what I did is I took the tilt. I got rid of pan. I took the tilt channel and called it length. and just let it display. So full up is the winch completely, zero distance, and down is full length. So we're actually looking at this top down. So this is the front, right? So from the front it makes no sense, but from the top, watch what happens. So if I clear this, and we'll take all of them, put them at full, and I'll set them up to the top, and as we start lowering it down, we've got full sets. Now don't worry too much that some of them are doing strange things at the moment, so I'll get onto that, but from the top down we're getting to see roughly what's going on. So it meant I was able to pre-visualize, at least mentally, some things were going on. What was the next constraint? So that at least made me be able to send them a few little video files of captures of this and that, and saying, look, this is the kind of thing we can do, and this is proof that ChamSys and me as an operator will be able to get the end result you want, months before the show, just to get them happy that this will work out. Don't worry, just to settle their minds. Next stage, I had to start thinking about myself as a freelance operator. Such being that these winch balls will get all the way down to the ground. Right. Both professionally and morally, in terms of health and safety, I don't want these balls banging anyone in the head. They don't weigh much, but one, live on TV with an internationally renowned person, I'm not even going to name what type of person, whether it's actor, sportsman or whatever, live, having one of these banging his head because I messed up when I hit blind or something or other and they'll shoot down, is not something I want. So, as you may have been just seen, as they're coming down, as they're coming down, you see some of them stop and others keep going. And if I move the visualization, you might see a bit better. Some of them are at different locations and heights and so on. Well, why is that? Well, that's because I've built into the patch a maximum distance that those balls could extend to. Be it for these ones here in the centre is actually on top of an LED screen. There's some here in a gap here that stayed there. They're on top of, you can just see there, they're slightly highlighted. They're on top of a large set piece that was extremely important to the show. Extremely important. There's more here on this side, which is where some musicians were, which were on a raised lectern, So all those are at different heights, and then the main ones here are basically a good hand height above head height. So I had to imagine, I know the presenter's slightly taller than me. He also had a female co-presenter who I imagined was higher than me and wearing high heels in a ball gown. So I gave a bit of room and thought, this much above heads, nobody's going to be, say, 2 meters 10 high. Well, that's what we'll call height, and that's where I set them all to. Right. And these ones down at the sides are the only ones that got pretty much down, that's right above ground level. And that's the reason, because they were right off far stage left, far stage right, behind all set pieces, behind all musicians, behind anything. And they were right around the cyclorama, around the rear of the stage, literally up against it, that I knew nobody was going to go on, and everybody that really went on stage would either never be near there, or if they were presenter and so on, they knew that this was a possibility, so don't go through there. There was no access in or out there of that part of the stage or anything like that. It's like I say, they were following a cyclorama, so I knew I was pretty much safe. I also, basically, due diligence, went and spoke to everybody, presenter, musicians and so on, and said, look, here's what's going on. During programming, until I had that done, I actually got the in-house guys to bring me sort of public barriers and zip tapes and things to close off the stage. And I actually did this as well at the end of the day. Once all crew had gone home, I basically did some testing high up in the air, and then just left the desk alone. And once all the shifts had finished and I was pretty much on my own with one or two people, that's when I set all these heights. I just wasn't willing to risk it, because it's the typical thing. I'm a freelancer. I neither want the financial or the moral reasons for, like I say, they don't weigh anything, but you just need one guy to make a complaint, and it could be months or years of legal battles for no bloody reason. So I thought it was easier to just be a little bit annoying and put my foot down and say, on this one occasion, no, I'm calling the shots, I'm doing it this way. Right, so like I say, how did I do this? Well, like I say, it was all in the patch. Now, if you go into here, now this is a really bad example, because I've manipulated these channels. They've all been highlighted. Right, so what I'll do is I'll quickly explain first what we've got. So if we go into here, view heads, in universe 5 and 6, the truss is split into two. So the first 4 trusses were a first universe, and the last 4 were the second universe, half and half, and there was an absolute spaghetti of DMX splitters and so on and so forth. Being Chinese, I think it was every 5 motors they needed it was 5 units per splitter output or something, so there was umpteen splitters up there, and it was quite a spaghetti cabling. Chinese electronics, you add anything more and they would start doing crazy things, and so on and so forth. So it turned out the guy that came with them was really good, and he knew all the tricks. But there was tricks that you had to play by their rules, not by what you'd normally do. But anyway, like I say, so this is patched to. I've put head 1 is bottom left, so closest to me, left hand side, and then going back, so it's 1 to 21, then 22 to wherever it was, and so on and forth, going up to back to 168. Right, so the trick of setting up a safety height is, if you take all heads, right, and do nothing but manipulate the length channel, it doesn't have to be at all, so really they'd be up at 0. Right, and so I'll clear it just to prove it, just taken it and done position 0 and 1, 0, just modified it a tiny amount. If we're going to patch, right, 1, if we're in the standard view heads view, it's highlighted all the heads that we're using, so we haven't touched the virtual dimmers, so they're not highlighted, but the actual fixture is. Now if we go to view channels, now we can see here, so here we are, universe 5, DMX address is 1, and it's head 1, it's got a minimum DMX value of 5, and a maximum of 200, right, so that's one of the ones that got down to the floor. The reason it had 5 is some of them, like I said, they were Chinese. They weren't the most reliable. If you set them to 0, some of them, once you cleared and they shot back up, would basically bang into themselves, and strange things would happen to the wire inside on the spool. So I basically reduced that, so they never got to they never fully recovered their full distance. There was always it was about, let's say, 6 or 7 centimeters before the motor, just to make sure. Right, and as we go further down, we can see the next one's 140. So those are center stage, above head height. I know that just by remembering that 140. And as I keep going, so I know that there's nothing in this universe. So the first universe was pretty much over open stage. Those are all around that. Now the more interesting ones are in universe 6. So here, this one's 120. There should be some far lower values than that. Let me keep going down. I can't see any, but yeah, there we are, 62. So that'll be over the LED screen, for example, and so on and so forth. Now, how did I get those values? Well, pretty simple. Once I was on site and I knew the location of things, I started making groups by colours. So while they were flown up in the air, I would basically highlight things and then record that group. So there's 27 in here, and I'd say, and what I was doing then is, right, so now I've found them by colour, so I'm not risking moving them. So by colour or intensity or whatever, just to differentiate between ones and the others, I'd find them, and then I'd just start bringing that length down one by one with the wheel. Right, and if you see here in the head file, remember I said that it's the tilt channel. Well, I've taken away its degree values, so it's showing the DMX value here for me to read off. So I'd take a note of that and then go into the patch and change it. The other thing I forgot to say is in that head file I set the locate value to be 0. So locate is shooting up. So all hell lets loose. It was like my emergency button was select all and locate, and then bang, straight up. Again, just little fine details of just in cases. So yeah, and that's really how I did it. Is just make up lots of little areas. Like, so here's rear stage right. This was and stage left. What this was little areas right in the very back corner of the stage that were behind presenting spots. So this is back. Listen, the presenter spent most of his time here, roughing this area, and one of the main cameras was coming across. So this was his backdrop. So these ones could come specifically low down to get in behind him and kind of appear slowly in and out of shot around his head and his shoulders as he's presenting. So, you know, so like I say, they've all got different lengths and for different reasons, depending on where they are and what they're doing and what sort of safety margin we want to give. And that's how I did it. Now, what's not fun about Magic Q in this aspect? Really, what's not fun is that you have to go in here and type in all these values one by one. And the only, like I say, the only way to do that, you can't, in this view channels, you can't just select or have it show only the length. So it was a case of there, 62, down, 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 62, enter, down, 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 62, enter, down, 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 140. Well, I didn't quite do that. I'll show you why. I'll go back to these ones above this LED screen. I'll clear everything so that the program's clear, and we'll, again, to position, just move it a bit. Now highlighted, okay, the only ones highlighted are those ones from the length channels from the LED screen. So that's one truss, another truss, another truss. There was 3 of them. Okay, that does help you. It certainly made it better for smaller values, but in the end, what I actually did is, I haven't got it on this laptop unfortunately, I actually wrote a Python script, and what that did was it started up and it would ask me how many heads are there, and I'd say 168, and it would say what DMX value do you want it to set to, and I'd say 140 for example, and I'd hit enter, and then I would grab back the top of universe 5, channel head 1, and set the cursor there, and it gave me a 10-second timer. And then what it would do is it was basically it would do the down, 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 140, down, 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 140, down, 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 140. I probably could have done that with an inbuilt macro, to be honest, but it was just the quickest, and well, it was just a way I was familiar with doing it. You might not all know how to program software or code. I did basic Python. It was a basic script, just to get it done. Yeah, it can be done the old-fashioned way of just trailing through and typing them in and one by one. But that's until it's something I actually forgot to talk about when I visited Southampton. It's something I forgot to request. It's basically is the way we can highlight that, because since I've done this show, I've done many more. People have called me up and go, right, you did that well, can you do it for us? And it's something I keep having to bring out this Python script to do this. And what I'll do is I'll set the entire stage to one safe value and then extend or other areas from there, so at least all of them have a base value. Yes, so that's that. Next, where do we go from there? Well, we've got them all. Let's select them all. Full. We've got all of the heads working. And I then start making, like I say, we've made groups, so we know that. So that's truss 1, truss 2, truss 3, truss 4, truss 5. Now we can start thinking about actual programming. And this all comes back to something I've said in a recent tutorial. Groups and group orders are everything, and I mean everything, especially in this case. So what I've got here is, this is the 168 heads as they were patched, just one after the other. Alright, so just as a proof, and let's go 1 star and set them all to red, and it'll just go brr along the line. If I do it even slower, back to white, and it's just going one after the other along the line. Yeah, that's useful, but that's a long line. Maybe we don't want that, so I've got it broken down, not just to that. Here it is. It's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, 1, 2, so on. So that's going left to right. I've now got it going forwards to backwards. Oh, I just picked red again, didn't I? No, I didn't. I've typed that in again. So now it's doing the same thing, but in vertical. Why? Well, let's start talking about that, and I'll start showing you. The reason being is, let's say if we call all horizontals. Now when we start using FXs is when the client's gonna start going, great, do a horizontal line going across, do a diagonal line, do a line going forwards to backwards. Here's where you need to start really understanding the FX engine in Magic Q, as well as fans, odds, evens, and so on and so forth, to be able to get these shapes, forms, and FXs that they want. Okay, I'll give an example. Let's do a color flick. So let's do add an FX. Let's do blue flick. Right. So at the moment we had the horizontal group selected. So it's literally just going from 1 to 168 along. So if it was this would look perfect if it was one long wall with 168 winches in order. But it's not. It's 21 by 8. So how do we do this? Well, we start using parts. So if I set this directly, let's turn the wheel up to 21, we're going to get that horizontal line. Now it's not perfect because it's actually a band, so you can see it kind of. Let's see. You can see it kind of starts in the middle and finishes in the middle. It's not perfect, but to be honest, nobody really worked that out. I hid that in what was going on. Also, if you start adding and removing numbers, so everything, once you realise that we're working in multiples of 21, so we can go down to 7. And what we're going to get? Well, 7 times 3 is 21, so we're going to get 3 bands. Go up to 14, right, where we're going to get kind of weird 2 half bands, because it's almost in the 7 times table, so it almost gets into 21. The same as 42, which is twice 21, and the answer to life, the universe, and everything, does 2 half bands, but in kind of odd even in terms of the trusses. You know, all these weird things happen, but if we go back to 21, and look, if we just add or remove one number, we're offsetting which head the FX will start on by 1 head in each row of the truss. So suddenly we've got this diagonal line going one way. How do we get the diagonal line going the other way? So at 22, add 1 more on. And I'll be honest, that's pretty much all I did. That's all that was asked. They didn't want something too crazy, so I was lucky in that aspect. But I went a lot further forward in terms of my preparing. So let's remove that FX, right? So yeah, that was a horizontal. Well, what about vertical? Well, like I said, I did the same thing here. So I've got a vertical group, add FX color, let's say the same blue flick, and it's pretty much doing the same thing, but this time we're doing 8 parts, and now we're going backwards, front to back, and yet again we can get diagonal lines by doing just 7 and 9, and yet again 8. Let's go up to 16. Yeah, we're getting a kind of odd even diagonal line, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's pretty much as simple in terms of FXs. We can also obviously do this in the pixel mapper, any other way you like, but if you're just looking for speed and simplicity, that's one way to do it. And to be honest, how I went about with it in this show, because it was far simpler. This is the show I learned about. Let me just check the plot. Yep. This is also the show where I first learned about the newer pixel map FX, where we can just do horizontal line and intensity, and that hasn't worked out properly. I need to look into that, but yeah, that's when I started making use of that. But in the end, like I say, when the LD turned up, he wanted things so simple. It was quickest to just do an FX with an offset of 1. So it was either 22 or 19. I can't remember which way it went, but yeah, it was that simple. It was a 2-color where I used, for example, like I said, we had an amber scene, so it was 2-color where the low value was basically reduced amber and the high value was a high one, set with the CCU operator in the OB truck with the values, and then it's just a chase through them. It's that simple. So if you see, I'm not getting up to full 100% red or anything. It's all reduced, quite low values, and that was just okay. That's a nice low and that's a nice high with the CCU operator, and change those into an FX. So yeah, shapes and forms, same idea really. So let's say we start off of that 25% is 25% length, which is 64 bits. So that's pretty much, you've got a flat square there, a flat cube of balls hanging down. But we want V's and things like that. Well, if we hold down fan, that's shift and fan in PC version, and if we put in 21 and end parts, what's going to happen? Well, we're going to get a left-right lean, yeah. And why? Because we've broken, like I said, the horizontal group into 21, which is how many there are. So every 21th, it's starting, or so the 22nd head, it's going to start this fan again, which is great because that's how many we've got. Yeah, that's asymmetrical. Now, if we go to symmetrical, we can start doing V's and ends and so on and so forth. Segments. I can't remember what I did with this. To be honest, I played around with this at home, and once I worked it all out, I had to basically write down a little book for myself. There we are. Yeah, so that's a front to back lean, and a back to front lean. Like I say, this visualizer, once you start to learn to look at it, so you think these ones are lower down and these ones are higher up, so the front's lower and it's tilting up to the back, so it's really doing this. And again, fanning it back the opposite way, it's doing the opposite. So these rear ones are down at the ground, and these ones are higher up, so it's leaning back like that. Once you've worked all that out, you can start, like I say, getting into segments. We can start doing interesting things. Sorry, I didn't mean to close that. So, for example, we've got 21. Let's call it 11 segments in symmetrical. No, not group. Segments, parts. So 11 parts in symmetrical. There we are. We've now got a kind of diagonal wave going across the truss. You can even see it. But why? Because remember, when it was 21, you've got the full truss, so we do a V. Well, we want 2 waves, so that's like an M shape. We'll divide that 21 by 2, 11. We can only do round numbers here. Yeah, and we've got that. And because it's 11, we're not getting it perfectly symmetrical and starting a new truss. So we're going to get it offset, so it's doing a kind of diagonal shape, just the same as the FXs. Yeah, that's another part of the explanation I missed out. Why have I got 21 and not 22? I was given 180 to play with. I deliberately chose to go with an odd number on the truss. The reason being, if I wanted to make any V shapes like that, I've got one column which is definitely dead center, so I thought it'd be visually more obvious and clean. So as you can see in this fan, that center one's not moving. So it was one of the things I explained to the client and basically stood my ground on. It's like, no, I don't want to rig all of them. Keep some of them on the ground, and because if I do this odd number, I've got one head that is dead center, I can put all these effects around, and yeah, it won't move, but it'll accentuate the effect because it's there, sat still, and everything's moving around it. You can see it's dead center. That was just me, personal choice, and like I say, I was given leeway on this show to do that kind of stuff. And really, that's all it is. It's just a case of getting in and making as many groups as possible, subdividing everything where they are for programming and for safety, and so you can then set these heads values, and then it's just learning the FXs in the parts and the segments and so on, and widths, and applying that also to the fans and odd evens and so on. It all works out the same, and then you just start making your palette. So that's up there. So that's a V shape, there's an N shape, there's a wobble S, back to front, everything the same, all leaning left, leaning right, and this is a start position of the actual final show, front to back to front, so new S, big V, things. The LD wanted a V shape that's leaning front to back but more accentuated. That's a W shape that's tilting from front to back, so the back's lower down at the front, so it's literally made a W and then tilted it back, things like that, and that's it. It's really just start making that. Just to prove, let's start showing you some photos. There's nothing in these photos that can show, so like I say, here's the LED screen at the top, and these balls are literally millimeters away from it, and all these ones in the center of the center stage, and so that's me standing and holding the camera around head height, so they're not going to hit anyone in the head if I do make any mistakes. The only time they did get down to that height is at the entrance of the show. There was a little bit of a fanfare with nobody on stage, with the title music rolling, and that was it. And then they lifted up into the air, and for example, one of the main elements of the stage was this LED screen, so I was definitely not covering that at any stage during the show. And they all stayed up there. I had a tiny little bit of fanfare during some changes of scenes, but again, I didn't cover the LED screen because those scene changes involved the LED screen, and I'm not covering it, and that wasn't to cover it up. So it was all pretty clean and simple. So next photo, you can start to see a bit clearer what's going on. So you can see here on the left, these balls are raised slightly above because these musicians are here, and they're on a little raised lectern. These ones here are also raised up because, like I say, there was a main show element going here on this little stage, and here at the LED screen. So yeah, this front truss, you can see they're literally getting right up to almost touching the LED screen, and down the back, this second one, these are all at the same height. That's actually some of the metalwork supporting the screen there. That's as far as they could go, and then the one down at the far back was in free air, but that was the exit, so the presenters and so on could come out from behind the stage. There was a gap in the curtains right dead centre of the screen, and they would come out here. So yeah, it's getting nowhere near their head height, but the reason I did that is we prefer, instead of just having them flat here, any movement effects, it was quite nice to actually not see them stop dead above the screen, and that they disappeared and reappeared, and we accepted that the ones touching the screen couldn't go any further because there's a screen there, they can't. But having the other ones appear and disappear was far more visually appealing. So those ones, like I say, the second set behind them went as far as the screen's metalwork, but the last ones had freedom to fully disappear and reappear during any FXs. So that was that one. And what's the last photo? Yeah, so the last photo is, like I say, it's just showing the musicians' areas. So like I say, this guy, I spoke to these people at the front. If they stood up, they would have hit it, but they are set elements they were sat on stage from before doors opened till after doors closed. They were never going to stand up. So they knew that these would come down to them, but don't worry, it's not going to hit your head. And so on and so forth, that they weren't coming out going in, so they accepted that. They knew that if something did happen and they needed to get off stage, it would be ducking down until they were off their little podium. And that's really it. Like I say, where was I lucky with this show? Well, I was given a lot of artistic and design freedom to do what I want. Like I said, they had a budget for 180 balls, and someone's going to come and rig them. What can you do with them? And they gave me quite a bit of freedom. In the end, the final design was really something pulled out between me and the LD. I offered him things, and he pulled out of many of the things I offered. He went, "No, that's too much. That's too little. But what if we do that?" That kind of thing. And like I say, I was also given the freedom to say, "No, I don't want the 180. I want 168 because it gives me that center, that dead center row column to start doing other effects with." Which unfortunately, like I say, I can't show anything. I mean, I'm probably risking it with these photos where there's absolutely nothing you can tell what's going on or who it's for. And most of all, I was lucky, and I've learned this since on other jobs, I was lucky where it was a straight grid of 21 by 8, because it made learning this far easier for when I went on to other sets and other stages, where I've since done it more, where there wasn't these things. And I've had to kind of work out how to work out the FXs. So in other sets, for example, I had to add in fake heads that didn't exist, to make square units so that you could do these FXs and divide them. So for example, imagine here's 21, but this second row had 19 and this had 17. Well, I'd actually patch the 21 but only give DMX addresses to the ones we were using. Why? So that when you're doing the parts and the FXs, you're still using that 21. That's a little trick I've learned. But anyway, I hope this has helped. If you ever get the chance to play with these things, yeah, they're well worth it. The only other thing I'd add in is be aware that they are really noisy if you don't get the expensive ones. So much so that anytime a presenter was talking, I had to program in the lowest possible speed. And it's not just that. The FXs were very slow. The resolution of one DMX bit was actually about 4 or 5 fingers width of height in the ball. And if you're changing an FX slowly, the ball would literally sit still and go bzz and move and sit still and go bzz and go and sit still. Now this wouldn't be the case with a 16-bit winch, but these are 8-bit winch. So that's why the speed channel exists. So while the DMX is literally going 10, 11, 12 in steps, that speed channel will slow that down so that the motor's not working in fast jumps, and it'll make it far smoother, and that'll silent them down, and also get rid of sort of jerky movements. I mean, in the rehearsals we noticed that, and the sound guys came and started to me, and to be honest, I went to the truck as well. I went, no, this is unacceptable. So after the rehearsal, I sat down and went, yeah, let's try the speed channel, and that's a trick. So I mean, that's an old school trick from and even with LED power cans, if you're using low intensity values, you'll see the step. If you use the speed channel, the color speed channel, that's what it's for, to smoothen all that kind of things out. Yeah, make good use of that. Other than that, really, that's all it is. It was a really great exercise for me to really learn the proper use of fans and FXs in terms of widths and like parts and so on. So I really get into these parts and the width values and the spreads and so on to get the FXs and to get the shapes that the client wanted to use. And I'm really glad I did it, because like I say, other than it's a good show that I enjoyed in, it gave me all the things I've learned about manipulating these heads has now suddenly made programming any FXs and positions of standard heads far easier, because I now in my head have it really clued up and set as to how it works. Anyway, yeah, there you are. Thought people might want to see that. Like I say, it's an absolute shame I can't and shouldn't post any show footage, because it would really concrete up what I've been explaining and really get it through far better than I could explain it and talk about for hours on end. But yeah, thanks for watching.